this is what bed bugs look like. So on the left are the adults, over towards the right are the eggs and the nymphs. So eggs go through a life cycle from eggs through 5 stages of nymphs to becoming adults. And in this picture here, you'll see the adults that have fed are on the bottom, kind of closer to the individual with their ring there. And the ones right above there are what bed bugs normally look like. Normally, they're very flattened. They fit into cracks and crevices. Any places where there is a business card can fit, that's about where bed bugs are going to go. And as they go through their life cycle, usually that time frame takes about a month to a month and a half in ideal conditions of 70 to 90 degrees. So that's kind of ideally where we keep our homes and our businesses and our hotels are all around that temperature. So they can go through their ideal life cycle in that amount of time. So that's one of the reasons why it's very, very important for us to have for us to realize that we've got bed bugs as soon as possible because they go through this life cycle so quickly. So as adults, they're about 1/8 of an inch long, reddish brown. Sometimes people think that they look like ticks. Sometimes they think that they look like cockroaches before they've got wings and when they're in the nymphal stage. So we've gone into apartments where people think that there are bed bugs, but they think they've only got cockroaches, but they actually have bed bugs also because they think that the bed bugs look very similar to the young cockroaches. So they're oval shaped and flattened. Where they want to be are cracks and crevices. So even though they're called bed bugs, they're going to hide in all sorts of cracks and crevices. Near the bed, especially near the bed, the nightstand, and things like that. And we'll get into that as time goes on. So adults don't have wings, but they do have small wing pads, which are even really hard to see in this picture with all these different bed bug stages here. They're very, very small. They don't lift up at all, so they're not able to fly. So they also do not jump. So sometimes people have something jumping on them that might be biting. Those are not bed bugs because bed bugs just crawl along. They don't jump. So if you've got somebody who comes to you and says, I think I'm getting bit by bed bugs, something's jumping on my legs, probably the most likely thing that it would be fleas. So if you have a hotel that allows pets, there's a possibility that maybe somebody brought fleas in. Also, there could be wildlife from outdoors where fleas have come in from the outdoors, something like that. But it's not going to be bed bugs if they're jumping. So that's some general information about bed bugs. They also need to have blood. That's the only thing they ever feed on is blood. And in order to lay eggs, they need blood, and they need blood in order to go on to the next stage also. So one of the kind of fun facts as this presentation was getting put together that came out, I don't know that it's really a fun fact, but a fact nonetheless, is that 1 out of 5 Americans have either had an infestation of bed bugs or know someone who has had an infestation of bed bugs. So us being in the pest control industry, and of course you being in the hotel industry, those numbers are even higher because you most likely at least run into somebody who's had an issue with them. But that's a pretty large number. So people are aware that they're out there. They're aware that someone that they know has had them, and there's also a lot of knowledge out there, whether it's true or not true, about bed bugs and how they're what to do once they do show up. So there was also another study that was done by the University of Kentucky that reported a single report of bed bugs from a recent traveler review will lower the value of a business room by up to $38 per room per night. So therefore, if a hotel was going to be going for $238 per room, the price would go down to $200 per room just because of reviews and because of other things like that can cause some negative thoughts towards the hotel. So if you think about that, if you say you had 100 rooms, that's $3,800 per night potentially that can be lost in a hotel with 100 rooms because the price is dropped because of a report of bed bugs. Whether that report was founded or not founded does not really matter. It's just all about the what is on reviews online. So if you multiply that times the whole year, you're looking at quite a large amount of money that could be potentially caused by bed bugs. So it's a larger number than just having to have one room out of service, having to move a guest that you have, or having to treat. The price is much, much higher than just that incident itself, if that incident ends up in reviews. So there's lots of different sites that I'm sure you're all aware of where people go to look to see if different places have bed bugs. So one of the locations is bedbugregistry.com. This is one where you can just type in the location of where you want to stay. People will enter in if they've seen bed bugs at the location that they did stay, and they will also check on here if they want to see if there are bed bugs at a location they intend to stay at. So if one review gets on this site, that's where that $38 a night potential decrease in business potentially happens, is if somebody looks up and sees that there's bed bugs. They may be less likely to spend as much as they would have before. And we'll talk a little bit about some other sites also in a little bit. So not only do guests bring in bed bugs, but there's other sources where bed bugs can be brought in. So if you have third-party laundering services, it's possible that bed bugs can be transported through the laundering service. And it's not that if the bed bugs go through the whole laundering cycle, then it will kill the bed bugs. So if bed bugs are washed, it will kill the adults and the nymphs. If they go through the drying process, then the eggs, the adults, and the nymphs are killed. So if they've gone through that whole process of the laundering, the bed bugs will die. But where you end up at a potential risk with laundering services is if there are bed bugs in the cart, such as the cart that you see in this picture, or if there's potentially some in the trucks that are transporting any of the laundry. That's another way that bed bugs can potentially get transported into your hotel without you knowing. Another thing is just if you have any sort of vendor that's coming in, if they have been at a location before they came to your location that potentially has had bed bugs and they have a mechanics kit or some sort of other thing like that, if that kit was in a place that had had a really bad bed bug infestation and one happened to get in, it's possible that they also could get brought into your facility as well once everything's taken out and whatnot. Also, it's good well, maybe not good, but another potential source is that employees could potentially bring bed bugs in to work. So if they've got an issue at home and they bring their belongings in, that's another thing that can happen as far as bed bugs getting introduced into the hotel. So why do bed bugs love hotels? Well, one of the reasons that they love hotels is that there's an ongoing number of people that come into the hotel that have blood, which is what bed bugs like to feed on. And especially in hotels, you have people that are coming maybe a night, maybe a week, and in that amount of time, they may not even realize that there are bed bugs. So the bed bugs feed, they go back into hiding, and the person may not even realize that that's what's happening. Another reason that bed bugs love hotels is because there is a much greater percentage of the actual square footage that's bedrooms, if you think about that with hotels. So if you go to a house, the kitchen might be only a quarter of, or the bedrooms might only be about a half of the actual square footage of the house. The rest is the kitchen and the dining room and the living room, but only a small percentage is the actual bedroom. In hotels, a much larger percentage is the actual bedrooms themselves, which are places where the bed bugs like to hide and where they will find people sleeping, which is what they will feed upon. The other reason that they really love hotels is because of things such as this, which is headboards. Headboards have some of the greatest places to hide. They're hidden and out of the way when sheets are changed, when the linens are removed. The headboard is not removed. It's right up against the wall, and usually there's lots of cracks and crevices. Like on the left here, you'll see the headboard that has all those little upholstery finishes on it where they can hide in cracks and crevices. The other one on the right has lots of cracks and crevices in the wood where bed bugs could potentially hide as well. So you've got people that are coming in constantly. So the bed bugs have a ready source of what they need in order to survive. So that's why they like hotels. So if you think about it, who is really inspecting your rooms? So you may have your pest control provider that's inspecting rooms. So that's somebody you'd want to find. You'd want to be finding the rooms first is the pest provider, because any bed bugs in the rooms, because it's much better if they find them before you have your guests visiting and finding them. You may have a canine program where dogs come and they smell and sniff for bed bugs. That's something you may have, so that would be good. You may also have your housekeeping staff that also inspects for bed bugs. That's also another, it'd be much better if your housekeeping staff found bed bugs than any of your guests found bed bugs. So one of the things that we recommend our customers do is to have informational sessions that are provided for the housekeeping staff, so that they know what to look for when they're, if they see bed bugs, what to do when they find bed bugs. So the best thing really to do is to save the bed bug in some way so that your pest management provider can inspect it. I'm just getting a little feedback on the line. I was wondering if you could just mute your phones. That will make it a whole lot easier for us to overcome that. Great, thank you. So having your housekeeping staff trained is a really great idea in order to be able to have them find a problem before your guests do. So this picture all the way on the right, you're probably wondering what that is. That's actually one of our coworkers' brother-in-laws, who has heard so much from our coworker about making sure you check for bed bugs when you go into a hotel, that he actually sent a picture to her of him checking the bed for bed bugs when he checked into a hotel. So when we think back to one of the first slides when I said that 1 in 5 people know somebody or have had bed bugs, this is the sort of situation that you're going to come across, because if somebody knows somebody who's had bed bugs, they are going to be extra cautious and they're going to check the rooms also. So it's much better if your pest control provider, the canine, or your staff are checking the rooms before the guests get in there, because it's much better if those folks find it rather than the guests find the bed bugs. So the guests can come in, they can inspect, and then really you want to think about what happens when that occurs. You want to try to prevent that at all costs, is having the guests actually find the bed bugs. So your staff is really the front line of defense in making sure that you are finding bed bugs before your guests are. So I know it's not going to be a matter of your housekeeping staff lifting up mattresses every single time, pulling up box springs. That's not going to happen on a regular basis. But there are certain signs they can look for, like the droppings from the bed bugs, actual bed bugs themselves, potential blood spots. Those are all things that can be looked for when the linens are being pulled off the bed. And those are really good times to be looking for all of those signs. Another time that's important is if you have the dust ruffles that are in beds. Those dust ruffles can be a higher risk for bed bugs, because for bed bugs to be hiding, because they are in an area that is not as likely to be changed on a regular basis. So when those dust ruffles are changed, just make sure that everyone who's going into that process of changing the dust ruffles pays attention to that and knows to be looking for bed bugs when that's done as well. And you're also going to be moving the mattress and moving the box spring. So that's another opportunity to spend a little more time and see if you see any bed bugs at that point in time. And the more educated your staff can be, the better off you're going to be. Again, rather making sure that they know what to do when they do find a bug. I think the first thought anybody has is, well, let me get rid of it and let me try to flush the bug. But then you're not going to know if you just found a carpet beetle or just a fiber, or if you actually found a bed bug. So saving it is very important. So here are common harborage spots where bed bugs are likely to be found. So while they're called bed bugs, there are lots of other places besides the bed where they can hide and where they can be found. So they can be in the box spring, they can be in the mattress itself, especially in the grooves of the mattress. The box spring has so many cracks and crevices, they definitely could be in there. A lot of beds these days have frames, solid frames, and they can be in the cracks and crevices in between the particle board that forms those solid frames and the metal parts that form that. The headboard we talked a little bit more extensively about before, so they can definitely hide in there. In nightstands, in anything that's right near the bed, especially that you might find in a hotel room, like a lamp or a clock or a phone. Those are all areas where bed bugs could potentially be found. The Bible that's in the drawer, usually, those are all places that are right near the bed that they could be found. Normally they're going to stay within 6 feet of the bed, but if their population gets bigger, which in hotels it usually stays pretty low because your staff will find it before it gets to be really big. But if it gets bigger, then it will tend to be out further from 6 feet from the bed, but usually it's within 6 feet of the bed in hotels. So places that they'll hide, if you look in this picture to the bottom right, around outlet covers, any sort of framing, any framing around windows, behind pictures, back behind pictures around the frames. They can sometimes hide there. In outlet covers, the bed frame, the mattress cover, any pillows and gaps and cracks in there. Inside drawers, so not only nightstand drawers, but drawers where there might be a dresser, they'll hide in there, and not just inside the drawer itself, but on the bottom side of the drawer also, so in the gaps and cracks under there. If there are chairs or ottomans or sofas, they can hide in cracks and crevices in between the upholstery there also. So those are some other locations they can hide. So pretty much any crack and crevice where a business card can slide, bed bugs could potentially hide. And they want to be hidden. They want as many parts of their body touching a surface as possible. So another thing that we definitely wanted to point out was knowing your furniture. So one of the things that's been very, very challenging lately, especially some newly remodeled hotels and areas like New York where there's very limited space to put separate pieces of furniture, is you will see a headboard that is connected with a nightstand, and in order to dismantle it, you've really got to actually dismantle it. It's not a matter of just moving the nightstand away and trying to move the headboard. And moving the headboard, as you see with this one, it can take multiple people to move the headboard. So if anybody has any say over the actual furniture that is installed when a new remodel is done, making it so it can be moved as easily as possible would be a lot more helpful for inspection and if a bed bug problem occurs. Otherwise, this really needs to be completely dismantled in order to get back into all the areas. And back behind the headboard, usually there's a lot of different layers of wood that are getting into those areas as well. So one of the main things with bed bugs is to try to switch the mindset from a reactive mindset to a proactive mindset. So trying to figure out where bed bugs could potentially be before they become a big problem. So bed bugs have got to be brought in some way into your hotel. So they're not going to be just coming in from outside like ants and mice and whatnot. They've got to be brought in with somebody. So somebody might have an issue with their home. They might have gone to a hotel before they visited yours as part of their vacation or business travel, and bed bugs ended up somehow inside their luggage. They open up the luggage and then they come out, and that's how they get in there. So it's a matter of being constantly vigilant and constantly proactive, because every single time you have a guest come in, one of those guests could be the person who brings bed bugs into the hotel. So finding them as early as possible is very important. So one of the ways we recommend doing that is having canine scent detection. So dogs can be trained for scents the same way that there's bomb sniffing dogs and drug sniffing dogs, and the ones that you see at the airport that are sniffing for vegetation that might be coming, or plant materials, or meat or cheese coming from other countries. So dogs can be trained to specifically hone in on a certain sense. They have very, very strong, strong noses that are much more sensitive than ours. So how do we know if they're effective? So there's several different ways that you would want to know if a dog is effective. So there's a possibility of just a company going and getting a dog, but making sure that there's ongoing training is very important. Making sure that there are hides that are done as part of the training process. So what our handlers do is they have double blind hidden hides. So what they will do is they'll have bed bugs that are in vials that a different person besides the handler handled. They put them in a hidden place. They did not tell the handler where they were. And then the handler comes in and with the dog, and the dog sniffs to find the hidden bed bugs, so that they are not, sometimes there can be signals that come from the handler to the dog. So trying to eliminate those by having a different person hide the bed bugs as part of the training is a way to make it so we know that that cue that might be accidental does not happen. So when you have a canine scent detection program, it's a good proactive monitoring approach for detection. So in that way, you can hit a lot of rooms over a period of time. So they can go in and they're much more effective than humans. They can find them more quickly. It takes less time to go through every single room. You can do it in the time frame between when people are checked out and when new people are coming in. It's a pretty short period of time that they can go in the room, search the area. It should be part of a routine, though. So you don't want to just do it once and then be done with it. You really want to have it be one of those programs that's quarterly or twice a year in order to get into all of those areas. And it also helps, it really decreases the ongoing pressure of bed bugs, because what's the worst thing that happens is if bed bugs are introduced and they're not found quickly enough, then that problem could spread to additional rooms, especially if you have guests that come, they are in several different adjoining rooms. The possibility of bed bugs getting moved from room to room is a higher probability. If we can catch the bed bugs before their population exponentially increases, that's why we want to use the dogs ahead of time. So it's really a part of the entire overall bed bug management program, is to catch the bed bugs early that have been brought in potentially by all these areas we talked about. So this is how dogs work. So dogs have much, much better senses of smell than we do. They have over 250 million olfactory receptors. We have like 10,000 olfactory receptors, much, much less than the dogs do. And also, so let's talk a little bit about, first of all, the olfactory receptors. So if you were to bake a cake, you will just walk into a kitchen where the cake is being baked and you will smell cake. You'll be like, oh, look at that's a cake. But the dog will actually smell each ingredient individually. So they'll smell the vanilla, they'll smell the sugar, they'll smell the baking soda, the flour, all of the individual components of it. Our noses are not that good in order to separate all those things out, but dogs are. The other thing is, if you've ever seen a dog, you can sort of see from this picture on the right, they are smelling much more than we are. So they have those slits on the side of their nose, if you've ever noticed that, maybe if you've got dogs at home. So they can smell and breathe kind of all at the same time. They can be breathing out and breathing through much more rapidly. So they can, in addition to having more olfactory receptors, they're also taking in more information than we are when we are breathing or smelling, because of the way their noses are designed. So that's why dogs are used for drugs and used for bomb sniffing, because they are so highly regulated for this sort of work. And so when we have our dogs that are being tested to see how they are with their scent with bed bugs, they are tested at the same time with drug sniffing dogs, bomb sniffing dogs, produce sniffing dogs. And so all of those different hides will be in materials in the room, and they will have to alert to the scent that they are specifically trained for. So they may walk by bombs, they may walk right by produce, but they will alert to the bed bugs because that's what they're trained to be alerting to. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about, let's just say you've had a dog program, maybe you're at the end of the quarterly inspection cycle for them, and you end up getting a guest that comes to you and says that they found bed bugs. So, maybe there was a guest you had right before them that had accidentally brought bed bugs, and they found a bed bug. So if they find a bed bug and bring it to you, that's kind of one of the hardest things that you're going to have to deal with. So you're kind of walking this line between saying, oh, we've had you don't want to be making it seem like you've had a lot of these issues before, but you also want to be very, very cognizant of what they may need as a guest in order to make their experience a little bit better. So one of the first things to do is to not panic. So making sure that your front desk staff, who are sort of the first line of defense, are educated about what to say to the guests and what to do, what the next steps are, is going to be very important. So to make sure that they also do not panic. So making sure that they know what the steps are, what needs to be done, what your protocols are. So maybe the guest comes with an actual bug, maybe they come with bites. Just knowing exactly what to do is important. So here are some things that you can do to try to help your guests feel more comfortable with the situation. So let's say we're confirmed that they brought a bed bug to you, we know it's a bed bug. There are several things that can be done to try to come up with a solution that the customer can be comfortable with. So one of the most obvious things is to switch their rooms, so move them into a new room. But before you move them into a new room, you also want to make sure that their items are dealt with in some way, so that if any bed bugs somehow ended up in the items that they brought with them, that they are taken care of in some way. So one thing that some of our customers do is they'll dry clean clothing that the guests bring. So they'll offer to dry clean them. Another thing that can be done is if you look on the right side, there's a box called a ThermoStrike Ranger, and what that is a heat chamber of sorts. So what's done with that is the whole rolling bag can be put inside this chamber. It's zipped up, so on the top there's a zip there that can be zipped in, and then it's plugged in, and there's a fan also inside there that helps heat up that chamber. And if bed bugs reach 122 degrees, that will kill all life stages, so the eggs, the nymphs, and the adults. These chambers go up a little bit higher because you want to make sure that the temperature in the most insulated part of that bag gets up to the 122 degrees. So there's several probes that go along with it that are put in there that will help to determine what the temperature is and that it got up to the right temperature. So these are some things that you can do to assure that the customer feels better about the situation. It's also at lower probability that they are going to potentially take them home. Okay, so the next question is, how do you deal with the bites? So it is not possible to tell from looking at a bite whether you have bed bugs or not in a room. That isn't one of the ways that we would necessarily treat if just bites were found, because there are so many other things that can have either cause bites, such as other insects that are outside. If it's a warmer area, people haven't been outside much when they were at home, and then they go on vacation and they get bit by mosquitoes. They may end up coming into the hotel and thinking that they got bit by bed bugs, but it had been mosquitoes. So there's lots of other things like that that could cause bites, other insects. There's also all sorts of other types of environmental conditions that could potentially look like bites. So one of the things that does happen from time to time in hotel rooms is that you have folks that are sleeping in sheets that are using different detergent. They're using the soaps that are provided at the hotels that are different than the ones that they have at home, and sometimes there's sensitivities that end up looking like bites. But if somebody comes with bites down to your front desk, saying that is probably not the most helpful thing. So what probably from a customer service standpoint, the best thing to do is to still do all of those steps that we talked about on the previous slide, move them to a new room, address their items that they have, just to alleviate any potential risk that if it was bed bugs, that could be the issue. So just knowing that there are lots of other possibilities, but how you address the situation is also important as well. So then let's just say that there was a bed bug that was found. You've done all you can do with the guests to make them feel more comfortable with the situation. Then you are dealing with the room, and you want to make sure that we're treating the room and doing what we need to with the room. So what is the best thing to do is to follow the prep sheet that your pest control operator gives you. First off, before they even inspect, is to leave everything in place. So keep all the sheets in the room where the bed bugs were sighted. Keep the linens, keep the pillows, keep everything in there, because we want to confirm that there is or isn't an issue, and then the items can be laundered after that if need be. But leaving everything as it is so that your pest control company can come and inspect is of the utmost importance. And then once they've inspected, you've determined the route of treatment for it, then that's the point at which linens such as the bedspread, the pillows, the pillowcases, the sheets should all be bagged up, tightly tied up, and then brought for laundering. So like I said, washing will kill the nymphs in the adults, the drying will kill the eggs nymphs in the adults. So if something's already clean, like somebody's clothes, they can just go in the dryer. But if you've got linens like this that are obviously dirty, you'd want to wash them and then dry them. But the drying is really the part that takes care of all the life cycles, the whole entire life cycle of the bed bug. So once the linens are taken and bagged up, there may be other preparation that needs to be done, like taking off the headboard, taking out pictures, removing the outlet covers. There might be things like that also need to be done. The best thing to do is just work with your pest control provider. They'll usually have a prep sheet of what items need to be done in order to have a thorough treatment that's completed. Also, make sure you keep in mind all of the steps that need to be followed. So if they come in, you typically, like Western, will treat one time and then we'll come back several days later, inspect again, treat if there are bed bugs found, and come back a third time. If no bed bugs are found, we may just treat that second time, and then the room can be put back into order. But be sure that you are following the pest control provider's recommendations about your staff going into that room. So most typical products, once the room's been treated, people need to stay out for 4 hours afterwards. That includes your staff, and that includes everyone in the hotel, not just, also obviously you'd want to keep the guests out, but it's also important that your staff stays out for that period of time. And then making sure you work with the pest control provider about when that room can be re-rented. This is why you've got some experts that you've hired typically to help you with a bed bug issue if it occurs. So making sure that you take their advice and everything like that is important. Another good reason why it's important to be proactive for bed bugs is because of these headlines. I don't know if you guys have seen any of these in recent years, but there have been several headlines about folks that have gone to hotels and had bed bugs when they got to the hotel. So here's 4 examples right here of lawsuits that occurred because of bed bugs that were found while somebody was visiting a hotel. So this is definitely something you're trying to avoid. This is super bad publicity, of course, and you want to try to avoid this. But even on a smaller scale, which is some of these reviews online, I know that you are looking at these on a regular basis because these are the tools that folks use to be able to decide what hotels they're staying at. And I know in your areas that there's always a lot of competition right nearby for other hotels that guests could stay at as well. So making sure that the experience that the customer gets is the best experience possible. And bed bugs do not typically fit into a great customer experience. And even if bed bugs do happen, which bed bugs happen, how you handle it is of the utmost importance. So if you have a guest that goes down to your desk and they say that they have bed bugs, and you are very proactive and very on top of it as far as moving them, working with them with their items and whatnot, that is going to be a much better experience, and they're less likely to even put on any of these social media areas that they have had an issue with bed bugs. But if they come down and you question whether they really know what they're talking about, or don't want to do anything for them, that's just going to be something that's going to get probably put on TripAdvisor the very next day or that night. So making sure how you handle that is like with every other thing that you handle on a daily basis. The cleanliness of the room, any sort of issue with the heating and cooling system, anything like that, how you handle that situation is more important than whether it happened or not. If you can try to make it not happen, that's great, but definitely how you handle it is important. Okay, so if anybody has any questions, you can either unmute your phone and ask any questions, or if you want to type in the chat, I could answer any of those, or we can try to get Jennifer.
Hello?
Hello?
Hey! Are you there?
Yes? Can you hear me?
It's Jennifer.
Oh, hi.
Hi. I don't have any questions.
Okay, but you got in there. That's good. Okay. I'm trying to
I
check
couldn't
the
get it
chat.
on the phone, but before I had unmuted and got a lot of feedback, I guess.
Okay. All right. Well, if there aren't any questions, then any information or any questions you might have after the fact, here are mine or Jennifer's email addresses. You can always contact our number, and they can get a hold of us as well. So just let us know, and we're happy to help you in any way possible. Thank you for attending.